Дамы и господа, прошу вас всех сесть.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
Estimados venezolanos, por favor, siéntense porque ya estamos listos. Доброе утро, дамы и господа.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to the energy transition session. In fact, this is more than just a session in the forum. Those of you who are from Russia will associate me with a TV program. But 18 months ago, I was charged with reviving the global energy prize. And today we're having a meeting between a number of energy companies in Russia, and this is the result of the new management. The old new management inherited an organization with 12 countries in the nominations. Now we have 36. Instead of 34 applications, we now have 94. It's a tripling. And soon we will be awarding the new Global Energy Prize. This global network has allowed us to conduct a kind of survey of players in the energy sectors. Traditional conventional energy now has a third of the attention that it used to have. We have launched a new product. These days, we now have the second energy report. It's called 10 new breakthrough ideas for global energy, or you can find it on our website, which is a way of looking at what can be done in the energy sector. It's a very balanced report with digital twins and alternative fuels and non-conventional energy sources. But if I call it a survey, I mean that we are looking at the energy transition period, and this is also a time when we can look at clean kinds of traditional fuels. For instance, the CO2 capture and blue hydrogen technologies. Maybe we are overestimating the importance of that. Let's look at the hosts. Mr. Novak, Vice Premier of the Russian government. Mr. Novak, what's your view on that? Where do we stand in the big global debate on the energy transition? Are we overstating the importance of that? That's a repetition. I want to welcome all the guests who are present here or who have joined us online. Thank you for being with the St. Petersburg Economic Forum. The subjects are discussed here with regard to the energy sector are very important. Thank you, Sergei, for organizing this panel devoted to energy transition. And thank you for taking care of the Global Energy Prize, which you described. This prize, which today has a fairly long history. It was established on the bequest of the President of the Russian Federation, and it is the top choice for the most breakthrough and innovative projects in the energy sector today. Energy transition is a subject that has been with us for a number of years now. It's a matter of very heated debates, and the pandemic year has heated them up even further. We understand that the energy transition is a competition between conventional and non-conventional energy sources. And there are also new non-conventional energy sources that scientific and technological progress offers us. Society has new needs and new demands, and there is a public demand across the planet for better care of the climate situation and less emissions and more environmental responsibility in the energy sector. So this process, let me say once again, is inevitable. But a lot depends upon the pace at which this is to be implemented. Many countries today announce their policies in the area. The policies reflect the public moods here. Many countries declare that they are going carbon neutral between the years of 2045 and 2060. They pledge to become carbon neutral. But we also hear declarations which say that many countries are going to totally give up coal-based generation. There are 21 such countries. They will give up internal combustion engines completely. They offer a number of scenarios, and there are a number of estimations by international institutions. Under the baseline scenario, the share of carbon fuels, which is 85% today, under this baseline scenario, it will be 70% within the next 20 or 25 years. The sustainable development scenario that has been calculated by the International Energy Agency, the share of carbon will decline to make 50 or 60% only. If the scenario of carbon neutrality is implemented, as many politicians claim, this share will have to be reduced by a larger amount to 20% within the next 20 or 30 years. Well, there are more questions and answers in this option, although some pledges have been made and some statements have been voiced. A lot will depend upon technological development and scientific breakthroughs. For instance, we still don't have enough technologies for energy storage. That must be the backbone of such technological transition. And not all is clear in using alternative fuels and sustainable energy sources. The cost of this kind of energy production, which is now much higher than that of traditional energy production, is another challenge. But according to estimates, this will be solved sometime in the future, sooner or later. There is also the issue of utilization of such components that will be used in the energy production if it is implemented with non-conventional energy sources. Some of these questions are technological, others are organizational. We don't know how to utilize used solar batteries or wind turbines. The first solar batteries appeared 40 years ago, and they are past their prime, and they need to be utilized. The same is true of wind turbines. One wind turbines is 3 wings made of carbon plastic that is non-destructible. And that's 20 tons of plastic from just one wind turbine. By 2023, Germany alone will need to somehow dispose of 14,000 wind turbines. That's a figure for the whole of Europe. Apologies. These are huge numbers. By 2040, we will have accumulated some 40 million tons of plastic from wind turbines alone. Solar batteries will make 80,000 tons of waste. that needs utilization. So if we talk about new trends for energy production technologies, we'll have to consider also the investments in disposing of obsolete materials. Between the years 2040 and 2050, these costs will range between $100 to $200 trillion. Now, who's going to foot the bill? Will it be the end user of the energy? That's the question. There are a number of challenges that concern developing countries, because today energy transition is mostly what developed countries talk about, countries with high standards of living, those who live fairly well. But on this planet, there are 2 billion people who don't have adequate access to energy supplies. Are they going to start using non-conventional energy sources from the beginning, or will they start with something conventional like gas? That's an issue. But the trend will be still with us. What we are arguing about is a matter of pace. There are many calculations, many different forecasts here. But it's very important that we should remember that traditional or conventional energy sources, that's fossil fuels, are not going away within the next few decades. Their share in the overall energy balance may change, but one way or another, they will be used and they will be the foundation of energy. And we're talking coal, perhaps more technologically profitably used than today. It will be gas, the foundation of today's energy. And we should be thinking about fuel security or energy security. And this means that we must make sure that the needs of the population are met with the energy supply, and the same goes for the needs of industry and all sorts of social institutions. So energy consumption is set to grow. We expect a growth of maybe 0.1% or maybe 1% of the current use of energy. So I wouldn't discount conventional energy sources. They are more competitive, albeit less environmentally friendly today. They are not going away, but we must make sure they are as environmentally friendly as possible. I want to say that here in the Russian Federation, we have a clear vision of our energy policy that will address both conventional sources of energy used in the energy balance of Russia. And Russia is also a major supplier of energy through export. And we are also considering a growing sector of non-conventional energy sources or alternative sources of energy, clean energy. I could talk about that in more detail, but I'll round off right now by saying that in response to your question, energy transition is coming, it's happening, but its pace will depend upon a number of questions, a number of different issues. And we must not discount conventional energy sources, which are going to stay with us for a while yet, and they have to be environmentally friendly. Dear friends, I did not ask Mr. Novak to speak more compactly. It's that we are limited in time for all our wish to talk about these important matters. We're meeting here because a year from now, the World Energy Council is going to meet in St. Petersburg. It's a very old organization. It's 17 years older than anti-Hitler coalition that once united Russia and the United States.
Some people here are actually afraid of you. They thought that you would be coming here saying that we should close the oil and gas fields, put windmills all the place around, solar panels. Do you actually agree with what Deputy Prime Minister has just said?
Well, I certainly haven't come down.
Switch on your mic, please.
I think my message is very different. I come with to promote a World Energy Congress which marks 100 years of history in a world energy community, and the message is energy for humanity. It's been the same message for 100 years, and we seem to forget it sometimes. We like to talk about technologies or resources or investment, but what we really need is an energy transition which is for people and planet. So we will be talking around energy for humanity. And as His Excellency Deputy Prime Minister Novak has said, it's going to take a mix of all resources to do that. What's really changing is not that we should keep thinking about the supply side, but that we should start thinking about the demand-driven solutions that are going to be needed, which means we've got to humanize energy. We've got to involve more people. Innovation and cooperation are the keys to success, and both of those are changing. Innovation is no longer about improving individual technologies. It's about the integration of different technologies and their combination, and also social innovation, behavior change, uses, and cooperation is changing. It's not just between businesses and governments, it's also involving more people. I think cities will play a big role in enabling energy transition towards more affordable, clean, just, and reliable energy. So I don't talk technologies, as you know, Sergei, I talk people.
Well, you just mentioned the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations in that sense. And we've got with us here President of the International Committee of the Global Energy, Nobel Prize winner, Rae Kwon Chung from South Korea, with whom yesterday we had an entertaining chat about this balance, not just between the societies, businesses and governments, but also between the producers and the consumers. Where's the catch?
Yeah, I appreciate the comment from the Deputy Prime Minister Novak about the pace and the practical way of using existing conventional energy in an environmentally friendly way. And one issue we have not fully captured so far in the debate for energy transition is about the carbon emission from the consumption. We are only focusing on carbon emission from the production side. When we are talking about the Chinese emission or UK's emission, we are calculating it based on the production. And it's very interesting data. For example, just one case of UK. UK succeeded since Wilkinson has come from UK. And so the emission reduced 40% last 3 decades. But when you it is based on the consumption production side. When you calculate from the consumption side, the per capita consumption emission from each British people never changed during the last 3 decades. It didn't change. So that means the people in UK still emitting the same per capita emission based on the consumption. So this is another dimension we have to take into account when you look at this energy transition issue. But I'd like to emphasize that the point that it is quite right and very reasonable that we have to think about the transitional technologies that can play a very important role to make the fossil fuel more environment friendly. That is carbon capture and storage. This is a very interesting technology that we can still continue to use fossil fuel while capturing the CO2 and injecting them under the ground. So these are the kind of technologies we can use to make the fossil fuel more sustainable.
Thank you, sir. На самом деле есть некоторые мифы в отношении того, какую позицию занимает Россия, какую позицию занимает.
There are certain myths about the positions of Russia, the West, and the North in terms of the climate change that stimulates this energy transition discussion. A short story I'd like to share. So I was on the Kola Peninsula, about 150 kilometers from Murmansk, in the reindeer camp, and an average reindeer is 5 kilograms lighter in weight than it was 5 years ago because they were unable to transfer reindeer onto their pastures because the water bodies do not freeze. So if we just face this methane emissions, not from the oil field, but from the glaciers melting, we will face a real danger. I know from my international counterparts that we think in Russia that it's all bourgeois inventions. Rossetti, it's a huge organization covering the whole country. Do you face any consequences of climate changes? Andrei, Ryumin. Yes, of course, Sergei, we do face these. And climate change considerably affects our work as well over the last years. On average, in our country, the country is a huge one, but we see that the winters get a little bit warmer and summers are quite hotter. And the huge challenges for us were in wintertime now. They're shifting on to heat peaks in summertime, conditioning, air conditioning, and everything like this. So this summer peaks require us to reinforce and enhance our systems of conditioning. Climate changes do not only bring about anomaly in weather. So weather changes are also quite common. So I started picking up mushrooms in mid-June, or July, which is quite abnormal. So the recent trend now is quite obvious. Well, cynically speaking, what difference does it make just for you, whether it is a carbon or solar generation mode? The latest Texas event showed that this kind of generation is okay, but they stopped heating up the blades, and there were some pauses with power supply. So transferring electricity power from point A to B, what makes it viable in the Russian conditions? What would we prefer? Like you said rightly, we are just transporting power from one point to another, and environmental agenda for us is quite okay because during our work we are not emitting any CO2. However, we look at this from a different perspective. We use a lot of material for equipment production. We use composite materials, which will also positively affect the environment because there are less CO2 emissions during the production phase. However, answering your question, I can say that we are prepared, we are ready to transport power that was really produced with responsibility love. So here now we have the Minister of Energy of the Kingdom of the Saudi Arabia, Abdul Aziz bin Salman Al Saud.
Is the oil production over? Are we really entering a new stage of the world's history?
Well, I've been asked this question just fresh yesterday. And my reply was that we are increasing our production capacity. Certainly, we are very confident that not only we already decided to do so, but I still repeat that you may expect some more of that to happen. Because honestly, quite honestly, as Alexander was saying and everybody was saying, I think it's quite irresponsible to try to zoom in on an agreement where you show a particular preference of a choice that is, you know, I know, and everybody probably in this audience cannot imagine it happening. But it is a scenario that sounds appealing, looks appealing, but then the devil is in the details, how you are going to go from here and here. I believe that the whole planet Earth has always been in transition, ever since God created it, and will continue to be in transition. And it is the duty of humankind to make sure that we harness that transition, we master it, and we ensure that that transition bring, as our favorite lady here has mentioned, that our goal should congregate around how can we make human being living better living, regardless of where, and this is the trick, regardless of what region they live in. The problem we have is that there is a type of condescending approach that is in command of the situation, whereby people have enumerated their priorities, but they're not subjugating it to the others, and in trying to achieve successes and achievements and mitigating the issue of climate change, one needs to be inclusive. And for that inclusiveness to happen, people need to be conscious of national circumstances of all parties engaged. As for us as Saudi Arabia, we have been took a proactive role in formalizing the Paris Agreement. And we were one of the first to ratify the Paris Agreement. And we want to ensure, and that's what we have been doing ever since we ratified the Paris Agreement, that we will ensure that we have committed ourselves, and we will continue committing ourselves to ensure that we fulfill our commitments as one amongst many. We certainly have proactively engaged in so many activities, such as I can enumerate just few. But I liked what Alexander was saying about wind, and which we will be doing a lot of it. But there is additional thing apart from plastic. There is also wood that goes into the windmill, because you will have to cut lots of trees aside from using lots of plastic, because the inner filling of these blades is wood. So here you go, in your endeavor to transition from hydrocarbon to renewable, you are actually reducing the ability of creating sufficient sinks to ensure that remove will be achieved. We believe strongly as Saudi Arabia, and luckily we were hosting the G20 last year, and all G20 countries had agreed that circular carbon economy is the way forward in ensuring inclusivity, in ensuring, as our lady here has mentioned, that technology should be spearheading the approach. The challenge is technological. The challenge is not taxing. Because if we go about taxing, if we go about throwing money here and there, like the $5 trillion that is mentioned, well, $5 trillion out of the current GDP constitutes something around 6%, 7% of world GDP, which means, and this GDP is being taxed by about 20 trillion. So actually, you are imposing some sort of a cost to the economy in the neighborhood of additional 25% of the current taxes that has been collected globally. That 5 trillion, if it is collectible, one would really need to ask, is this the right way to spend it? Do we haven't got millions and millions that are suffering from energy poverty as we speak today? Can we mitigate biomass consumption by working hard with so many of us here in this room, and I name Alexander and I name my friend from Qatar, to work on providing cooking fuels for the 750 million people that are deprived from that. Can we talk about how can we make energy more sustainable? Yes, we can. But I believe that the issue of inclusiveness has to prevail. And I believe that our challenge has always been, as human, what technologies we need to bring to mitigate these concerns, common concerns, because it has to become a common concern.
Thank you, sir. We also have with us Saad Sharida Al-Kabi, a colleague from Qatar. So I've been to your part of the world, and I've noticed that not just your soil is rich with natural gas, in your case, and oil, in the case of your neighbors, but it's quite sunny there. People are talking now actively about green hydrogen, so that you take energy from the air using solar panels, you use humble water, apply hydrolysis, and get hydrogen, and that this would substitute natural gas. Well, given today's figures, in fact, the green hydrogen costs up to 3.5 to 6 times more than the green hydrogen. But as Deputy Prime Minister Novak said, of course, things are getting cheaper. So is there a danger on the horizon for traditional natural gas? Hydrogen being of fashion these days?
Okay, first I'd like to thank you and thank the Russian Federation and everybody that participated in organizing this great event. And I'd like to thank my colleagues here and especially Deputy Prime Minister Novak for inviting us to this. I'd like to just mention something regarding the transition. I agree wholeheartedly with everything that was mentioned by the Deputy and the Prince on their view on the transition. But one element that I'd like to add, there is this euphoria about transition that everybody is getting excited and maybe overly excited in discussing this issue. And I mean, some reports, IEA said that we shouldn't invest in oil and gas. I think there's a very big danger that we're going into this kind of a discussion where we understand for years that when we deprive the business from additional investment, you have big spikes and you deprive customers and needing really nations from whether it's oil, gas, or all the byproducts that come with it. So I think we should be very careful in how we talk about transition. I think it's very much needed. We all have a responsibility to produce in a more environmentally sensitive way, produce using the best emission technologies that's available. We have to monitor methane emission. We have to do carbon sequestration and storage and be much more responsible, which I think all of our colleagues and the companies that work in our countries are doing very responsibly. And they've taken this as something front and center in each strategy of every company you see around the world. But we need to be careful that we deprive investments from oil and gas sector that's going to really harm humanity and the more than 1 billion people that actually don't have electricity today. Regarding your question on hydrogen, I think hydrogen is also something that's new and exciting, and a lot of people are interested in that area, but it's also in its infancy, if you will. There is the green hydrogen, the gray hydrogen, the blue hydrogen, whatever you want to call it, and the green one taking solar. I mean, definitely Qatar has a lot of. We're actually building solar farms to do that, but to really go to green hydrogen, you need much more solar than what we could produce, and you need much more land. Qatar is a very small country. We are looking at hydrogen, and that is going to be part of the energy mix, if you will, in the future. But it's still very expensive, and it's in the beginning. I think the Prince has a bigger plan on green hydrogen that they've announced, and maybe he can discuss that.
Thank you, sir. С нами Юрий Петрович Сентюрин, генеральный секретарь форума стран-экспортеров газа. Если можно, передать ему микрофон. Юрий Петрович, ну как у вас там, тревожно?
Добрый день.
На фоне энергоперехода, я имею в виду.
Добрый день. Я приветствую всех участников сегодняшнего события. Благодарен за приглашение форума стран-экспортеров газа принять также участие в этом мероприятии. Хочу сказать, что мы далеки от тревог. стран, входящих в состав нашей коалиции, основываясь на имеющихся у нас возможностях, прежде всего упомяну глобальную газовую модель, это продвинутый программно-аппаратный комплекс, позволяет избавить наше правительство вот от этих трёк, о которых вы говорите. Мы убеждены, что углеводородный или век углеводородов еще далеко не иссяк, их рано вычеркивать из списка ключевых энергоносителей. Мы считаем, основываясь на наших данных, фактологических, научно обоснованных, что к 2050 году мир, энергобаланс мировой будет базирован на энергоносителях на основе углеводородов. Мы считаем, что их доля составит в мировом энергобалансе к этому временному горизонту не менее 71%. И сегодня для нас спор или оценки сместились в другую зону. Это в зону того, в каком объеме будет происходить перебалансировка между различными энергоносителями. Конечно, мы представляем интересы стран, добывающих и экспортирующих природный газ, и поэтому в первую очередь делаем оценку того, что будет с природным газом, но во всех сценариях, которые мы разрабатываем, базовый сценарий энергоперехода, сценарий ускоренного энергоперехода с учетом обновленных энергополитик стран, об этом сегодня говорили. Страны объявляют о том, что они отказываются от угольной генерации, от двигателей внутреннего сгорания, а также с учетом тех технологий,
Виктор,
которые...
секундочку, просто техническая проблема.
So giving up internal combustion fuels and engines, with conventional energy sources, we can hope that they will remain an important sector of the energy balance. These are our calculations. We are not worried. We supply our governments with these conclusions, and they can build their policies around our data and basing on the provisions that our union supplies, so that policies can be built sustainable and supportive of national interests. Thank you. We have a hybrid conference, not to be confused with hybrid war, of course, and we have somebody who is remotely joining us, the Vice President of Venezuela. Do we have him here? Can we hear him? All right, then we'll go online later. You see, they needn't travel all the way to St. Petersburg. I was watching Mr. Akshutin. Are you quite confident and quite free of worry? Thank you for this question. I don't think it's a matter of either or. That's not the way life develops. Green energy opposed to natural gas is not what we're having right now. I wouldn't do that. Natural gas is the energy of the transition period, many people say. But if we look at the analysis provided by the analytical agencies, they tell us that in the near future there'll be a 30% increase in energy consumption that will be covered by gas. So if we hear the question, will gas be present in the energy sector of the future, we confidently say yes. Natural gas combines the features of many other fuel sources. For instance, environmental friendliness, which is typical of non-conventional fuels. It's also flexible. It can be used in the energy sector and in transportation, flexible like oil. And it's accessible, rather like coal is, even though coal will be receding into the background, as we heard. So should we be concerned? Well, if we talk about gas as an end product, Perhaps we should be, but gas is more than that. Gas is a raw material to produce other resources, such as hydrogen, green hydrogen at least. But, well, there's gray hydrogen, there's brown hydrogen produced from coal. I come from Kuzbas, Russia's coal region, and they have a number of technologies that look quite promising. So let me explain. Green hydrogen is produced from air, blue from gas, and brown from coal. Well, our gas can be processed. Gazprom, working both in the east and in the west, is engaged in global-sized project, say in the Amur area, where we have refineries that make good environmentally viable use of all the components of natural gas that we have. Talking about hydrogen, you will have heard that 3/4 of all hydrogen produced today is produced from methane. And that's for a reason. The technologies we have today, traditional technologies for producing hydrogen from methane, where CO2 is processed or stored, are familiar. They are scalable, they can be improved, and they are less energy consuming than other alternative technologies of hydrogen production are. So it's not surprising that they are widespread today, and they are going to be even more widespread in the future. Although alternative technologies are now being developed, and Gazprom is engaged in these projects. Trying to respond to your question, I would point out these two things that are to do with the energy transition and our concerns or absence of such. One is that natural gas today is going to help the energy sector make that transition, and two, that it will remain as the foundation of that energy. And one more thing that I need to mention, the trend of the day, is about methane. Methane is more and more used as fuel, and it's trending to increase. And it will play an even bigger role in the global energy balance. Now, a very important question that is relevant for Russia and for Norway. You see, hydrogen is very good as an energy source because it results in water that you needn't store anywhere. Any coal-based fuels produce substances that you have to dispose of. In Norway, they are building a new business around pumping CO2 down into natural or artificial underground cavities. Russia has a lot of such cavities from depleted oil wells. Can that become a new sector of the economy for Russia, as it is happening in Norway? Well, we know in Gazprom first addressed this 12 years ago, but we were thinking about it slightly differently. We were thinking about pumping CO2 to replace buffer gas in our gas storage facilities. We do have the technologies. We may need to develop relevant infrastructure and the techniques involved here. Yes, we agree with that. But can it become a viable line of business? Well, only if it's later covered by the price of hydrogen in the market of hydrogen yet to be created. Then it will be ecologically viable.
The last speaker. And if we have not just a tranquil and prudent, but also honest dialogue regarding all of this, a lot of people suspect that the European passion, as far as the green energy is concerned, is essentially based on subsidies, which are readily available from the EU budget, say the EU budget, and which unimaginable in the developing world. And well, I do hear accusations like that quite often, especially because I deal a lot not just with the Russians, but also with my good friends in, say, Latin America. What would you say to that? Are we being honest here when we say either or, but we forget about the subsidies footnote? Oh, Angela.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Loud.
Yeah.
I think I would suggest it's an interesting enough question, not very interesting for me. I think there's a big difference between price, system cost, and affordability. And we don't put these together in an open, honest, inclusive conversation enough. And so the question of subsidies are good when you're enabling things to happen in the short term. Subsidies become perverse if you keep them going and they benefit the wrong people. So again, it's not a question of subsidies are good or bad, it's the context in which they're being used. So I think that, for me, the big challenge is we keep talking about the price of supply. We don't talk about costs of the whole system, and we don't talk about affordability. And they're different things, and we need to have a better conversation about energy transition being affordable, inclusive, and manageable at a social pace of change.
Well, luckily we have now a connection with the nuclear sector. I understand that we have them on the screen. Summer Bilbao León. ¿Me puede oír? ¿En qué idioma vamos a hablar? ¿Castellano o inglés? No importa. Usted es española.
Mira, yo soy española, sí.
Bueno, hablemos en castellano entonces.
Итак, хорошо, давайте вы будете говорить на испанском языке. Thank you very much for having joined us. You represent a sector which is the environmentally friendly alternative to conventional energy, but many countries deny the use of nuclear stations. Germany and Britain are closing their nuclear stations. After the Brexit, Britain now goes its own way. And Russia used to promote nuclear energy with support from Britain. But after Fukushima and after some other events, can we say that nuclear is a viable source of alternate energy?
First of all, thank you, Sergei, for the question. And thank you to the organizers for making the possibility available for me to join you here. Clearly, I would have much rather be there with you in beautiful St. Petersburg, but okay, I am here from London. So, as answering your question, I think that we really need to realize that the urgency and the size of the challenge that we are facing regarding climate change and environmental concerns for the production of energy is huge. And as I say, incredibly urgent. And if we add to that what you've heard already, that there is a very large number of people in the world that in fact are still not having access to the quality of life and the standard of living that many of us enjoy in developed countries, clearly the challenge compounds. So this means that we really are going to need all hands on deck. And obviously nuclear energy not only has been already for the last 40, 50 years a great contributor, being currently the largest single source of zero carbon electricity in developed countries, and can continue to contribute in the future. And I would say that perhaps is more than just electricity. As you know, nuclear energy can produce also zero carbon heat, which is going to be incredibly important to help decarbonize other hard to abate sectors. And you've discussed some of them already. We have the heavy industry, we have transportation, particularly from the shipping or from the air transport industry. We have the district heating, the heating and cooling for buildings. And of course, we have hydrogen as a very important carrier of energy that can be used for many of these sectors. So the role of nuclear is going to be very, very important moving forward, and we are seeing that already. And yes, it is true that some countries have chosen not to use nuclear moving forward, but at the same time, we have seen many other countries that have chosen to use nuclear. So you are seeing that, yes, it is true that perhaps Germany is de-emphasizing nuclear, but you look at many other countries in Eastern Europe and in northern countries such as Finland that are very much looking into incorporating an increased use of nuclear energy. So I think that the key here is, number one, each country absolutely needs to look at the natural endowment, their history, the culture, and they need to decide what is it that is going to work with them. But at the same time, we really need to look at the problem holistically. As you said, it's a very complex problem, and all energy sources and all hands really need to be on deck.
Nice flowers. They must symbolize the future. Thank you. А вот есть человек в этой аудитории, который...
Now, in this room, we have somebody who is listening to us and smiling, Mr. Khmarin of RusHydro, Hydro Energy. It sounds safer and less a matter for concern, even if you remember the history of some floodings. Hydro facilities are now viewed as storage facilities. The sun may shine or not, the wind may blow or not, so energy produced once must be stored somewhere. Maybe hydro stations can be not just energy producers, but energy accumulators. Water is accumulated by being pumped up into storage facilities. So what roles do you see for hydro power facilities in the future? Thank you, Sergei. In our holding, we deal in all kinds of renewable sources of energy, including hydrothermal. We're the fourth largest energy holding on this planet. Our hydro energy is, as you all know, perhaps the oldest kind of renewable energy known to man. The first hydropower station in Russia was built in 1903. It's that old. Our research institute is 100 years old. Hydro energy blossomed in Soviet times. In the 1990s, it experienced a decline of sorts. But in my view, hydro energy is undervalued today. Of course, each river is unique. Each place in each river is unique. Hydro power stations are expensive to build, but once built, it stays there. Think of an analog. You're offered a choice of two cars, one cheap and one expensive, but the cheap one burns a lot of fuel and it produces emissions, and maybe 30 years from now it will need to be restored or maybe exchanged. The second car offered is more expensive to buy, but it requires no refueling, and it's going to last for a very long time. Once it becomes depreciated, it is integrated into the natural landscape. Which would you choose? Isn't the choice obvious? So hydro as accumulators of energy, certainly. Perhaps it's the only way of industrial size energy accumulation that is available now. And it's also a way to regulate energy. So what are you going to build in the near future? Well, we have plans in the future to develop conventional, traditional places where hydro is present. It's the Caucasus region, for instance. We're also looking to the Far East, where there's a lot of potential for Russia to develop its hydro facilities. We have used our potential by just 20%. Other countries, such as Brazil or China, have done twice as that, and some countries have done 4 times more than that in utilizing their hydro potential. So we have a lot to develop into. Thank you very much. I'll be opening a few secrets by explaining how our Global Energy Association works. We still have 3 principal nominations: conventional energy, non-conventional energy, and the use of energy for non-conventional purposes.
We have introduced an honorable diploma of the association that is awarded at the end of the year to the veterans of the national energy sector. But I would like to thank you for awarding Academician Maslov this diploma. Rossetti, Surgutneftegas, Gazprom and others approved of this idea, and they became a good partner of the Global Energy Prize. They also promote a dialogue, and I'd like to open a secret to our Qatar guests. We have decided to award you such a diploma, but we're not going to do it today. We're going to come to Qatar and award it there, and you will be awarded this diploma for the contribution to the preparation and organization of this forum. And we're also thinking about a whole series of seminars and workshops, and we have signed the RusHydro agreement quite recently. But we will not be included into the statistic of this forum yet. So the Supervisory Council, Mr. Teller, the chief of the Power Association, was included at Jorge Maria Sanguinetti, ex-president of Uruguay, Peter Wilding from the United Kingdom. So the Oleg Budargin is chairman of this council, and Arkady Dvorkovich and others. So would you like to say something? Well, okay, then we still then have a couple of more minutes, and I would like to demonstrate the diversity of the global energy landscape. So we awarded the last year's prize. We transferred the money, part of the prize, and just we did not yet award the medal. So one of the laureates will talk to us from Berkeley, but he's was a just Chinese-born person. So can we show this video? Добрый день, меня зовут Пейтон Янг. Я хотел бы поприветствовать Ассоциацию глобальной энергии, сессию, которая проходит в рамках Санкт-Петербургского экономического форума.
You personally, but I would be happy to share some of my opinions through this video from Berkeley, California. Global warming and climate change is real. For 2020, we had a record high temperature on our planet Earth. This is the direct result of our industry heavily relying on the fossil fuel for the past century. Energy transition is the key. There are many great challenges towards a net zero or negative carbon emission economy for the next few decades. First of all, the existing energy infrastructure has been heavily reliant on the conventional fossil fuel for many decades. It has great momentum and also huge inertia. We will see increased usage of renewable energy such as photovoltaics, wind, and geothermal. Meantime, I think some of the new chemical energy storage technology will start to play a significant role. For example, hydrogen economy will start to shape up the overall energy portfolio in the coming decades. Our work on the semiconductor biohybrids for artificial photosynthesis represents another new technology for the renewable energy conversion and the storage. Essentially, using this particular biohybrid system, we can convert carbon dioxide into liquid fuel using sunlight and the water. And in one step, what we are doing here is to store the solar energy directly into chemical energy in high density form. So it will significantly reduce and mitigate the carbon emission. Climate change is real and it is accelerating. We will not be able to reverse it overnight. However, I do see strong hope that collectively we will be able to fight it with strong determinations and strong wills from the government and the people all over the world.
Вот такая история. На данный момент, для справки, кстати сказать, премия глобальной энергии составляет 39 миллионов рублей. Мы, естественно, хотим эту сумму увеличить и подумаем, что в этом году нам это уже удастся.
We want to raise the sum of the global energy prize, which is 39 million rubles, and we would like to call upon the high caliber scholars. Carlo Rubbia was one of them, the Nobel Prize winner, so the lifelong senator of Italy, and a representative from Greece, and we have a video from him, and we will upload it in all our networks. And so we also have a youth prize would be targeted at corporate youth competitions of our companies and members that we would support by mentors of the who will be the leading experts across the world. So, Alexander, are we going to carry out the Congress next year as it is planned? Well, I think that the anniversary, the Jubilee Congress that will mark 100 years, will take place in St. Petersburg. And thank you for choosing our country for conducting this centennial celebration Congress. And in conclusion, I would like to thank, first and foremost, our guests, our panelists, especially those who came over from abroad, who are here among the panelists on the stage today. It's great by showing great respect to our country, to the topic that we're discussing, and this is an important one indeed. I would also like to thank my colleague who just flew in for the session and will go back. And the flight time is 5 hours, but it is important that we managed to make him a member of the Global Energy Celebration. I hope he will be able to come over to October, to the Russian Energy Week due October. We would like to invite you or to be participating in this offline event. You're most welcome to participate. I'd like to thank Angela Wilkinson and our Qatar counterparts and Rae Kwon Chung for participating and speaking today. So I think we agree in thinking about the energy transition. But there are more hydrocarbon representatives and suppliers, countries that are producers and suppliers of hydrocarbon products for the Russian markets, including Russia, Saudi Arabia, Gazprom, and Qatar. maybe we will. It is no wonder we agree in our opinions. Maybe you all read about the prognosis about the International Energy Agency, WEA. So we need to stop funding new investment projects starting from 2001 in oil, gas, and coal industries. However, I can't imagine how we can stop investing in new projects already tomorrow. Maybe oil prices will be $200 per barrel if we stop funding, or gas prices will rocket. The volatility then will increase. Yet, I think we need to be more responsible in approaching such strategies. When we speak about energy resources, we speak about the major security issue, because it is important for industry, for humanity. So power consumption will increase. We quoted that the energy consumption will grow by 30%, but electric power consumption will just be twofold for the same period of time. Artificial intelligence, the internet, big data are all very power-consuming, power-intensive sources. And I think we should be very careful when calculating whether the new hydrogen, solar, and wind energy sources will be enough. Of course, their share will be growing. It is undeniable, but we should not give up the existing energy sources, or they will be more energy environmentally friendly. And many global energy laureates who engage in technologies once again commented that a lot depends on technological advances. We will hope that we will direct our technology research on the carbon capture and disposal, hydrogen-related technology, new hydro and other accumulator technologies. There are not very many technologies that could be commercialized. They're not yet competitive enough for that. So we need to increase our efforts to translate it into practice that could benefit all those who live on planet Earth. I believe in natural gas. I believe in oil in the decades to come. Yet, I believe in renewable energies alike, and it is unavoidable. We have a lot of programs in Russia. Just Vice President recently signed a resolution on the state support for the next stage in introducing the renewable energy sources. It's quite a fresh resolution that was tied up to this energy session. It was initiated by Mishustin. Coal will still be an important part of the energy balance. If we take China, that announced carbon neutrality by 2060, they introduced 39 gigawatts of coal-driven energy sources. Maybe there will be a decline that would follow the peak, but it also once again develop on further technological advances. We need to join efforts to prevent possible hype or greater volatility in that area. We need to be more responsible. We can calculate how we can achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. So we just need to stop investing in traditional energy sources. But it's pure mathematics. Life is different. Had it been so easy to ensure all our companies in this sector, not only Russian ones, but all the international leading companies would stop investing. They would think that it will be not in demand tomorrow. However, the investment process is still there and it's increasing. So in 2021-22, they'll be growing, definitely. So once again, I'd like to underscore in conclusion that in Russia, we will support the development of conventional energy sources, and also we will attempt to diversify so liquefied natural gas markets and others to be included. Oil will be used more actively in the future, not only as a fuel, but also as a source for consumer products. As a petrochemistry will be further developed. 2020 was an important year in terms of taking important strategic decisions and documents. We improved our energy strategy, as well as the liquefied natural gas strategy and renewable energy and hydrogen energy strategies and so on. I think a lot will depend on the nuclear energy in the future. It is not part of the European taxonomy yet. However, about 10 countries disagreed with that, Russia included. And nuclear energy from nuclear NPPs in terms of the carbon just the lowest one, 6 kilowatt per hour per 1 square meters, where solar and wind energy are quite higher. Solar accounts for about 80 grams and wind 14. Of course, in coal and oil, it is even higher than that. So nuclear energy has a good future, and we're improving security issues. A new trend in this regard, which will be also viewed as a strategic trend, will be development of minor nuclear generations as big blocks from 1,000, 1,200 megawatts will give way to our 5 to 100 megawatt scale level, and this gives a new opportunity to using nuclear energy in the world. This is quite a new and very promising trend. We are working for closed cycle, new technologies and fuel cells, and we think this is going to be a source of pure carbon-free technologies. Let's join our efforts and act in concert to work on the climate agenda, but without neglecting the conventional energy sources. And I think this session demonstrated it quite clearly that we are on the right track and we should move on. Thank you. This is a paper, a copy of the 10 breakthrough ideas, and I'd like also to refer you to the website, which is of interest both for investors and scholars. And I would like to thank the company that prompted this idea last year. Thank you. So the Vice President of Venezuela was to join us. He will be part of the oil-related session at 5 o'clock. You're most welcome to come.